Hello, I have this beautiful soul, Sarah, with me today. Thank you, Sarah. I'm so honored to have you here. Can you please tell me some about yourself and what you do?
Thank you, Azadeh. I'm so glad to be here. It's really nice to meet with you and talk about these things today. So, I'm an artist and a coach, and I live in Stroud, which is in Gloucestershire in the UK, with my husband and my daughter, who is nearly 10. And I started out as a biologist, and so I've had a very interesting range of different work over the years, and I worked in rainforest, and I later trained as a designer. So I worked as a graphic designer for some years, and now I'm really a painter, a performance artist, and I offer coaching for creativity and self-expression.
Thank you so much. And can you please tell me a little bit about the experience you had in Amazon? Was it Amazon or forest? Yeah, it was such a lovely, enriched. So I will love it if you will share it with us. Could you?
Yeah, sure. So I studied biology in the 90s in London, and I was always actually from the age of about 4 had this dream of being in a rainforest, of going to a rainforest. That was from a storybook that my aunt gave me, and there was this beautiful image of a forest. And when I was studying biology, I heard that one of the teachers was working in Ecuador and they said, "Oh, didn't you say something you want to work in a rainforest? I think he's going to one." So I went and asked him, and he said, "No, no, I'm not going to the rainforest, but I am going to the cloud forest, so you could come with me." I was like, "Yeah." So I got to go on this trip to Ecuador to study butterflies in cloud forests and dry forest. And then out of that, I started to meet people and become involved in some conservation like projects about the biodiversity. And this led to a chance to work with the Chiviar people in the Amazon rainforest in Ecuador. And we made a kind of exchange where I brought some Europeans and we were doing some studies. And there was also a young reptile expert from Ecuador joining us and studying snakes and amphibians. And we all went with our sort of intention to study and gather information about the diversity, and we also learned about the way of life. We created some records of that, and we were teaching about money and tourism and development as a way to, which is what the community had requested, was to be empowered to have some strength against petrol exploration, which was happening in their territory. I'm still somewhat in touch. The My colleague Pasquale sadly died of COVID, and he was a really special person, a very amazing guy who'd really worked so hard for his community, and it was a real serious loss, you know. But his brother is still there, his family, so I'm in touch with them. We had the most, you know, for me it was a huge discovery to understand how people relate with the plants and the animals in the forest and talk there. It's all people, basically. There isn't separation in the way that we think of it, that there are non-human things. These are all living beings, and the most sophisticated practitioner, the shaman, would be able to negotiate with the animals for permission to hunt, permission to live in different places in the forest. And so you need to make sure that you're in discussion with the forest and finding out where is safe to be. And another aspect was medicine, and that everybody was, they actually wake up in the night and discuss their dreams. So this way, the family teaches the younger people how to understand, interpret dreams. And in the dreams, there are things happening, such as a tree spirit could give you a prescription for your medicine if you're not well. So, you know, go to this tree, take the bark, boil it for 3 hours, you know, don't eat any fish or salt for a week and just drink this tea. So it's really precise information. Yeah. And we asked about Western medicine, and some of the people were saying, "Oh, can you get us some aspirin?" You know, they wanted our drugs, and and we asked, like, well, do they have spirits the same way? They're like, "Yeah, yeah, they come in white coats like your doctors have," and we they come in the dream, and but they're very, very powerful spirits, they said. They're very, very strong. So I just got a completely new understanding of how sophisticated it's possible to be in relation to the body through these dreams and communications with the environment. And it's really stayed with me, this concept that um, it's such an antithesis to the way I was educated and raised, to think of everything as separate and dead. You know, like catch a butterfly and you have to kill it in order to understand it. And it's like, or you can just talk directly, you know, there's a whole different way of being. So I found that really impactful in my understanding of life.
Such a blessing for you to have this journey with you and
Mm.
have this spirit connection and learn about that. So
Yeah,
such
yeah,
a
absolutely.
enriching, blessing.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. I feel like I want to talk more about that than what I actually want to talk about.
I know, yeah, yeah. I could too. I could talk and talk. Yeah. Try and stop me.
Well, we can read a book and talk about it another time.
Yeah.
Then what you do then daily to keep your mental health in check?
Well, I'm not always the best at it, but there are a few things now over the years that so I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis a few years ago, and that had a big impact. I also had other experiences in my childhood and throughout life, which, you know, we all end up with challenges and things we have to deal with. And yeah, so I've kind of one really important thing is the painting. So last year I spent, oh, there's one. Last year I spent much of the year developing a collection of paintings, and I hadn't done something so committed like that before. I've always painted and made art, but to make a big collection of 100 goddess paintings, that was a real challenge. But what it meant was that I was painting pretty much every day, or at least every 2 to 3 days. And this I found was my medicine. So incredibly powerful way, not just for my mental health, but my physical health. Because with arthritis, you know, the hands are sore and in pain. And then that's quite depressing and upsetting because I can't live how I want to live. I can't play with my child how I want to. So many restrictions. But in the painting, somehow that sensation, that feeling of being in pain would dissolve, and that would give me like a relief, like a window of freedom. And that then in turn is also mental health. I also like to I've got like a dance program, so a very simple way to just dance and like lift the mood in the morning, listening to, like, I allow myself 5 minutes, because if I think it's half an hour, I'm like, that's too long, I've got too much to do. But if I allow 5 minutes, and that's how I started painting actually, it was 5 minutes in the painting room. That's it. It's okay. You're not going to disappear and lose all your tasks. And then it turns out it's 2 hours, but that's okay because, you know, but it's the 5 minute rule. And I take a short walk, you know, to get some air. And I also, there's one other thing, which is it's not every day, but every week I have a kind of buddy and we do a share. So we listen to each other. And that is amazingly powerful practice, to just feel that somebody's really heard whatever you're, you know, struggling with that week, and you listen back to them as well and find connections in what you're going through. That's really, really probably the key things. Mm.
I love the last part. Thank you for sharing. And
Yeah.
thank you for being so honest. Is, you know, when you're honest, then healing happens when you're honest. So thank you. And what about inner child work? Have you done any?
Well, I have had some therapy, but I suppose that's sometimes about that. But my sort of being a coach, I've read around a lot of therapeutic modes and therapy, psychotherapeutic ideas, and practice some. So I would say inner child is something I've learned to do, also really important. And in the last few years, I've seen so many different people offering different modes of doing this. For me, it comes down to essentially, sometimes it's called inner loving mother, or the idea of a parent who really listens and cares and attends to you, and being able to kind of hear your own different parts. So there's another model called internal family systems, and in that one there's these different parts. And so we listen to ourselves, instead of identifying as like, I'm really angry, it's like, part of me is really angry. And then we can have a kind of conversation. So it's about kind of creating conversations in your head. And some of those parts are small children and they're really hurt and upset, even from birth. Like I've worked with a birth healer. So we often think we don't remember our birth, like that's ridiculous, right? But actually it's very much in us. And so if you had a difficult time as you were being born, that could be something that's not been resolved. So there are these ways of like listening to that part, a 3-year-old part, a 5-year-old, maybe, you know, something happened, and then learning to develop the inner voice that is a really strong, kind, loving presence as well, to listen to that. And that is quite a skill. It takes a bit of practice and a bit of time to get used to that, because if we're in the hurt and we haven't got the caring voice, that's when we're kind of lost and frightened and might become, as adults, you know, acting out a 3-year-old's pain. If you see a 3-year-old who's upset, you know what that's like, right? They don't have any boundaries. If we're still acting that out as adults, we could be hurting other people as well. And because our power is way beyond that of a 3-year-old, but we can easily slip into that mind and become the 3-year-old emotionally if we haven't built that inner presence to take care of the 3-year-old as they go through their suffering. So I guess that's how I kind of intellectually compose it for myself. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing your insight about inner child healing. And a last question. Do you have any advice for someone new in this journey?
Yeah, that's a really great question, because looking back, it's like, how many years was I, you know, struggling with something and not figuring it out on my own? So other people, I mean, I think one of the most amazing things really is that, you know, I'm in my 40s, so it's like even the internet was only just starting to appear when I was at university, right? So it was a completely new thing, and we had a course on how to make an email, you know, like the internet is incredible. It's transformative because there's so much information. Obviously, some of it isn't great, but there is good, really good people offering. And also psychotherapy itself has really evolved. And so asking for help, finding support, doesn't always have to be paid, like the idea of a listening buddy. You can set that up with a very simple framework. If you look up co-listening, there's a process you can do with someone else, and it can only be half an hour or 40 minutes if you don't have time. And yeah, just I guess what you're listening for and looking for is that kind, loving voice. So you'll recognize it maybe in a painting, or maybe in a song or a poem, or a piece of text someone's written on Facebook, or whatever it is. Listening out, is that a loving voice? And then moving towards that. And that in itself can be really hard if you're in a troubled place, even to be able to identify what is loving, or to have the feeling of wanting to go towards it. So just becoming aware of those things, that's for me been very, very slow. I think it could be faster now with the richness of information and connection that we can have now.
Thank you so much, Sarah. It was so lovely to have you here. Is that anything you want to add before we go?
What would I add around mental health? I think the body is really important. So even what I used to do really at my most simple level would be going for a run or getting some exercise. And again, that can be really hard, but looking for that caring to the body and the caring to the soul, and building that around you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Mm.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much. Yeah, great to chat.